Athletes' mental health has been in the spotlight lately, and just this week, Springbok wing Sbu Nkosi opened up about mental health struggles due to pressure from playing rugby at an elite level. Now, this is a reality for most of our athletes in the country, and it has sparked a greater conversation about clubs doing more to ensure their athletes are doing well mentally. And just joining me to talk a bit more about mental health in sports is Solomzi Nqweni, someone who once dreamed of playing for the Proteas before a paralyzing illness ended his budding cricket career and basically changed his life as a whole in 2019. Solomzi, thank you very much for your time and welcome to the show. I mean, before we get a bit into your story, from your point of view as an athlete, as someone that was a professional athlete, please can you just let us in on just some of the pressures that one faces as a professional athlete and how that can contribute to mental health struggles?
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for having me on and giving me, the opportunity to share my views on this particular topic. I think as an athlete, there are two kinds of pressure, internal and external, because we often put so much into wanting to realize and achieve our athletic dreams. So there's an internal pressure we place on ourselves to realize and make that happen. And then there's an external pressure, from the public, from family, from friends, the pressure of expectation, especially if you've been identified as a person who actually has the ability to go all the way. So it's an extremely tough sort of position to be in. It's like high risk, high reward, right? Yeah. It's fantastic when you do achieve it and when you do make it and when you realize your dream. But if things don't work out, it's literally the opposite on the scale. So extreme pressure on athletes these days.
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine how you strike the balance between the goals you set for yourself as a player, what your coach wants, and also the expectations from fans. But your story as an athlete is quite different in the sense that your career was cut short due to an illness. In a summary, how did you find yourself in the position that you're in right now? Because it's not a story of an athlete that was injured and therefore your career got ended.
Yeah, look, for a long time I struggled with it. Obviously, for me too, I had ambitions and dreams of representing South Africa at the highest level. I put a lot of time, sweat, tears, blood, all of that into achieving that dream and that goal. So it took me a long time to accept the situation that I found myself in. But once I did accept, and once I started focusing on the future and not necessarily who I used to be, but what I needed to be now going forward, I think that started the healing process for me. So it was an exercise in being able to accept, I don't want to say cut the umbilical cord, but it wasn't a cutting of some sort, and then sort of rebrand myself and rebrand the goals that I wanted to achieve out of life in general. And that's not an easy thing to do. It does take time. It does require a lot of support, and you also have to be very realistic with yourself. A lot of conversations in the mirror need to happen, but those sorts of things can only happen with the necessary support and the necessary vision for yourself. I mean,
we're looking at visuals right now on the TV of you trying to walk again and just learning to walk again, you being in hospital and so forth. Not a lot of people know your story. I know you were a professional cricketer who was applying his trade in Scotland. Then what happened?
Yeah, by random sort of an act of God, I should say, that I fell ill with an autoimmune disease where only 1 in 100,000 people actually get this illness. One day I woke up, in the morning, my hands were extremely weak. By the evening, my legs were weak. My whole body sort of shut down. I wasn't able to talk, drink, eat, communicate, nothing. Completely paralyzed from the head down. The only thing that moved or functioned at that point was my brain internally, and then sort of my eyes. And that was crazy to go through, and even to this day I'm still healing from that experience. But fortunately, I did get a lot of support, not only from doctors, nurses, medical professionals, psychologists, family, friends, but also people that I didn't know. Many acquaintances who the story sort of fell on their laps, and They reached out with positive messages, positive sentiments,
Yeah.
and that really gave me the motivation to want to prove those people right, that I could make it through this challenge. And, I did make it through, though be it I may not play professional sport ever again,
Yeah.
but at least my life is back on track, and, I have new goals and new ambitions that I'm plowing myself into now.
I mean, just to track back a bit before we get to where you are right now, how did you come to terms with dealing with the fact that you have now this illness that you don't even understand what it's all about, and accepting what you are currently going through mentally?
So before, and as an athlete in general, often your identity is associated with what you do in sport, right? So they'll say, okay, Solomzi, the cricket player, or Tumi, the news broadcaster. We often tie our identities to whatever it is that we do. And I think, that can be a mistake, because if we find ourselves not doing that particular thing anymore, we lose our sense of identity. And that happened to me. So for a long time, I was grappling with who I used to be and what people used to know me for. And I didn't want to let go of that. Justifiably so, because I'd worked so hard to get it, right? But I needed to, I needed to let go. I needed to see myself in a different light. I needed to have a different vision for my life, which still allowed me to be fulfilled. And that wasn't easy, and it all starts with that level of acceptance, with that level of understanding and being self-aware in terms of, this is where I am now. What is the reality of me achieving what I thought I wanted to achieve, and what is achievable for me given my current circumstances, and what do I need to do? And once you start there, I think that's where you begin walking the journey on that track. Not to say it's going to be a simple one. There will be more challenges you face, different challenges, psychological challenges, family challenges, relationship challenges. There will be challenges, and I think as an individual, as a human being, you need to be aware of that, but also equip yourself with the tools to be able to sort of deal with them as and when they come.
When was it that moment that you feel like things changed for you? Because I do understand from reports, they suggest that mental health affects rehabilitation, outcomes, and recovery. So for you lying on the bed, because I do understand you were in hospital for 6 months, when did you decide, I need to start thinking positively for me to recover?
It was when I realized that the original way I was thinking that I previously mentioned now was holding me back from actually moving forward. And there was some sort of subconscious activity going on whereby I feel like I wasn't progressing the way that I needed to progress in my illness, because doctors would say, okay, at this stage you should be here and you should be doing this or that, and I wasn't achieving those goals. And I think a large part of it was because I was sort of still in denial about the reality. And truly speaking, and once you make that psychological decision that, this is it, there's no magic pill I can take, I'm waking up to this reality every single day, I now need to focus on what are the things on that particular day that I can do to take myself forward. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, literally on that particular day, what is it that you can do to make you feel as if you're achieving something? Because often anxiety and frustration sort of stems from that gap, from where you are and where you want to be. That gap is where that frustration is.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself actively doing something towards getting yourself to where you want to be, you sort of eliminate the anxiety. But if you sit and do nothing, the anxiety increases. I'm not a psychological expert, but this is just something that I discovered for myself through this journey. So it really all started with that level of acceptance, and then once you accept, you then think to yourself, okay, what is the next step that I can do to move myself from point A to point B? We'll deal with point C tomorrow.
Was your club very supportive throughout the journey? Were they with you step by step till you got to the point that you find yourself in right now?
Very much so. My team in Scotland, as well as Cricket South Africa and the Warriors Eastern Province, they fully supported my recovery. I was often getting messages, emails, texts from former players, current teammates, management, staff that I'd come across, really, they really did want to see me well. I think they also probably knew, given how extreme my illness was, that it was a long shot that I'd ever, sort of wear the cap again for my respective teams. But, sport is not only about what happens on the field. It's also about the relationships that you garner that will last you a lifetime even after your career is done. And this experience has definitely showcased that for me. And even through those relationships now, post my professional athlete career, I still am able to call on some people, leverage, do business deals even with people that have been in and around the sport. So it shouldn't be viewed as just a game where, you rock up, you play to win, of course, you entertain the fans, but there are actually long-lasting relationships that can be carried even into your life post actually playing the sport.
Solomzi, thank you very much for your time. Solomzi Nqweni just talking about how mental health is a big issue in sports as a whole, and just sharing his story and how he got himself to thinking positively again. He's still on the road to recovery right now, but as you can see, he's in a much better place.